There's a serene lake in southeastern Ontario suddenly being treated as though it's a person, with rights, guardians, and the ability to sue if your snowmobile takes an unplanned dip. It's what's happening at Rice Lake, led by Alderville First Nations Chief Taynar Simpson, fresh from a taxpayer-funded globetrotting climate summit. On the surface, it's sold as an ecological savior, but beneath the surface, this could reshape who controls the shoreline, local businesses, and your weekends on the water. From lavish trips to legal contracts and a shadowy guardian council, this story is part environmental crusade, part power grab. And the lake isn't just making waves, it could sue. So let's not dig in, let's dive in. That's right, we're diving in, pun very much intended, into this watery scandal bubbling up in southeastern Ontario. It involves the serene lake called Rice Lake that is suddenly declaring itself a person. Well, not really itself, someone is acting on its behalf, but I digress. We're talking full legal personhood, complete with rights, guardians, and the power to sue you if your, for instance, snowmobile, say, breaks the ice. And Alderville First Nations Chief Taynar Simpson is leading the charge, fresh off of a taxpayer-funded jaunt to Brazil's hypocritical climate circus, where a resolution was passed endorsing this personhood initiative. So while this may seem and be sold to the public as a way to save and revitalize ecology, it's going to have sweeping impacts over who controls the shoreline and businesses alongside the water's edge and your weekend on the water. But first, let's rewind to the origin of this story. It all started back in the spring of 2024 when Port Hope Mayor approached Chief Simpson with a wild pitch: grant legal personhood to the Ganaraska River.
The genesis of the idea came as well when the mayor of Port Hope, Mayor Hakimski, she came to my office and she told me about this idea she had and if we would be interested in signing on. And we were thinking that absolutely we would love to. I thought that we should also include Rice Lake on there. So now that's been added to our conversation. So it would be maybe the whole water system around the Ganaraska as well as Rice Lake, because we know there's a lot of harms being done to these systems. There's overfishing, there's pollution, there's development, and we feel like these water systems are in jeopardy if we don't do something. Have the supports and the capacities of Port Hope, which is a larger town than we are, because we know it's going to be an expensive process. The legal process isn't cheap. But at the same time, we're going to be leading, Alderville is going to be leading this process because we do speak with a voice that we feel speaks also for water and the nature elements. Because it is something that we've always protected. As you might know, water protection and water walking has been a major focus of our people for the last several years. And we know that we got to keep that push up, and people are looking to us to keep up the fight.
Though this didn't come to fruition, the province quietly slapped new fishing regulations on that river in Port Hope, banning anglers from the historic salmon run from September 1st to October 14th to protect the fish. Undeterred, the spotlight then shifted to Rice Lake on the outskirts of Alderville's current reserve limits. Last month, while jetting to the UN's lavish, hypocrisy-soaked climate summit in Belém, Brazil, that's a city drowning in raw sewage and bulldozed rainforest to make way for this pop-up gathering, Chief Simpson proudly unveiled the Alderville Band Council's resolution granting Rice Lake full legal personhood. Now, the hypocrisy here is chef's kiss, because Simpson was preaching lake protection and purity in the backdrop of cruise ships doubling as floating luxury hotels, spewing emissions while locals choked on raw sewage, and the rainforest got bulldozed for yet another climate crusade. And don't forget the electrical grid that literally caught on fire from poor planning. To be expected, it seems taxpayers footed the bill for Chief Simpson's multi-flight getaway as an official Canadian delegate, something I am aiming to confirm through access to information filings, which you can support at our exclusive website, rebelinvestigates.com, and chip in there to our continued government accountability digs. Now, Chief Simpson said that this personhood is an important undertaking to shield the lake's rights forever. Lakes naturally can't speak for themselves, he says. So enter the Guardian Council. They're hand-picked stewards who can haul polluters, builders, or even clumsy ice fishers into court on the lake's behalf. Personhood means that the lake has the same protections as people under the law. It seems noble on the surface, but let's peel back those lily pads, shall we? This is step one of a 3-part crusade making Rice Lake Canada's second person waterway after Quebec's Magpie River in 2021. Simpson is seeking partnerships from landowners to business owners to municipalities to all levels of government. Port Hope jumped in last September, passing a motion to endorse efforts to date and encourage collaboration. It's cute, but Port Hope is on Lake Ontario, miles away from Rice Lake. It's not their turf, but they even went so far as to host a benefit concert that raked in over $20,000 for this personhood initiative. And here's the part that no one in the legacy media dares to touch. Simpson's real empire isn't some tiny rural band office. It's Wampum Records, proudly billing itself as Canada's largest Indigenous issues research and consulting firm. For nearly 3 decades, they've been gorging on federal contracts, everything from treaty disputes to residential school settlements, missing and murdered Indigenous children files, and get this, Simpson himself was a civilian embedded at National Defense Headquarters in the mid-90s, where he oversaw employment equity and gender integration for the Canadian Forces. He's deeply ingrained in every lever of the Ottawa grievance machine, chairing solar companies, settlement boards, you name it. So when Rice Lake suddenly needs guardians who can sue on its behalf, guess whose consultancy is perfectly positioned to cash in on the legal fees, the studies, the Guardian Council contracts, and the endless taxpayer-funded reconciliation gravy train. It seems less about the fish and more about building an unaccountable parallel legal system where a lake can drag you to court and one well-connected chief holds all the cards. NGOs, professors, and institutes, those are all his clients. From policy development, archival dives, and cross-cultural training, this consultancy firm is a powerhouse. So when Rice Lake sues you for boating more than your allotted time or taking too many fish, who's first in line for these guardian legal fees? Seems like a massive conflict of interest that no one's talking about. But there's even more absurdity surrounding all of this, and that's when it comes to enforcement. Because Simpson admits on a local radio show that there's no independent policing for this band and on this reserve. They rely on the Ontario Provincial Police, who, Simpson says, ghosts their calls anyway. This personhood doesn't give them any oversight mechanism. It's more like symbolic swagger. And speaking of symbolic, will the lake now suddenly have pronouns? They, them, zer? I'm all for clean water. Nobody wants deoxygenated dead zones or invasive seaweed choking the bays, but this overrides elected councils, municipal rules, everything. Why bother voting if a guardian council dictates fishing season, building permits, or sues you over a boat? And spare a thought for the little guy, the property owners pouring their life savings into Rice Lake homes, the tourists casting lines, the businesses docking boats. The impacts will be huge, as Simpson himself says. I bet property values will tank, development will freeze, and red tape will be thicker than the lake weeds. Does that sound familiar, perhaps? We only need to look and flash back to what's happening in British Columbia, where my colleague Drea Humphrey has been sounding the alarm on land grabs just like this. In British Columbia, the Cowichan tribes were just granted Aboriginal title over roughly 900 acres of private and public lands on Lulu Island, suddenly throwing property owners into limbo because the court ruled that the province and federal government never extinguished title and had no right to issue fee simple deeds in the first place. Homeowners now face years of reconciliation negotiations, forced buyouts at below market rates, or crippling land use restrictions. The same legal logic is already being weaponized nationwide. In August, the Supreme Court of Canada ended a 35-year fight over a slice of Sauble Beach in Bruce County, Ontario, all because an 1855 surveyor sketching a 2-kilometer curve of wet sand botched a boundary first promised in the 1854 Saugeen First Nation Treaty. That error shrank the reserve by a crucial 2.2-kilometer stretch of shoreline, and its consequences are still echoing today, with that disputed sliver, a tourist magnet since the 1920s, now symbolically renamed by the First Nation and a source of compensation contention for 170 years of alleged lost use. The town of South Bruce Peninsula and a handful of private landowners fought this, warning it could set a precedent for mass expropriations, but they lost at every level. Superior Court in 2023, Court of Appeal in 2024, and then the top court this summer. Now, landowners stare down co-management schemes or outright restrictions on their waterfront properties. That same precedent is exactly what the new personhood push for Rice Lake invites. Your cottage, your dock, your boat launch, your snowmobile jaunt, or winter fishing hut, all suddenly subject to approval by unelected lake guardians, veto power from neighboring First Nations leveraging similar treaty or title claims, or a lawsuit filed in the name of the lake itself.
Once you're a person, you can sue for damages. If, say, a developer comes and builds right on you and pollutes into you, you can sue them. But at the same time, say a fisherman has a bad day or he falls in the water or, he catches a cold, can he sue the water for that? That's something that theoretically could happen. So we'll have to test that all in court. It's a challenge that I think we're up for. But at the same time, it's something that you have to take the good with the bad, and we will see what those cases could potentially look like.
Look, I'm all for protecting our environment from invasive species to punishing polluters, but this personhood push, it's a slippery slope to serfdom, where lakes sue you for living, and consultants, of course, get rich. It seems like reconciliation expansionism wrapped in greenwashed eco-branding, and it's coming to a shoreline near you. Now, I did reach out to Chief Simpson to inquire about the Rice Lake Personhood Resolution, the selection of this Guardian Council, his travel to the climate conference, and his potential conflicts of interest with his consultancy firm, Wampum Records, but he did not respond before publication. If you're a Rice Lake regular, a concerned property owner, or simply fed up with what is happening, email me, tamara@rebelnews.com. Your voice matters. Use it or risk getting drowned out by the lake and those claiming the authority to speak on its behalf. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Canadians deserve transparency, accountability, and secure property rights. That's why we're calling on governments to act now at endlandgrabs.com. Sign our petition at endlandgrabs.com to stop UN-driven land seizures and protect Canadians' property rights.